This slideshow is really about the seasons as we see them in the Canadian Rockies. It's about spring, summer, fall, and winter. Those photos were taken near Jasper. I had to stand in that spot for a very long time to get them. I hope you appreciate that. Let's start with that tried and true, if hackneyed, approach to the seasons, signs of spring. I should be showing you pictures of early blooming wildflowers, right? Nope. Around here, the first sign of spring is this little guy. Gal. It's a female Dermacenter andersoni, the Rocky Mountain wood tick, and she's hunting around on someone's skin for the perfect spot at which to suck out as much blood as possible. Guy ticks do not do this. Guy ticks are searching for beer. Seldom finding any, they settle for second best, that is, mating with a female. Then they die. In the process of trying to empty a host of its fluid content, and aren't you glad these things are small? A female tick also gives something back. Arthropod saliva, i.e. tick spit. Tick spit can contain pathogens, including the microbe that causes Rocky Mountain spotted fever. You don't want to get Rocky Mountain spotted fever. At the very least, it will wreck your whole summer, and at the worst, it may kill you. So if you've been out hiking in the Canadian Rockies in April or May, when female ticks are doing their thing, at the end of the day, have a tick pick. Do this with a friend to check your back. Hairy places are popular tick turf, as are tight spots under your clothing, for example, under bra straps and the elastic band on your underwear. Fortunately, as Dermacenter andersoni explores your body, she acts like any other tourist driving around the campground looking for the best site. Then she takes a while preparing dinner, meaning that she inserts her mouth parts slowly, so you typically have a few hours in which to find her and remove her before she actually starts to feed. Alas, once you find her, you have to terminate her with extreme prejudice. Flushing her down the toilet is a good choice. If you just chuck her out the door, you will find her to be very loyal. She will come back to you. And don't squash her between your fingers. These things do not squash easily, and if they do, you will be smearing yourself with whatever contagion resides within. Time for some myth-busting about ticks. Ticks do not drop from trees as you pass by. This myth comes from finding a tick, or maybe 10 of them, in your hair. But no, they have climbed up there once they get onto your body from lower down. They actually lie in wait on the seed heads of grasses, as you see here. They hang out there, literally hang out there, the front 4 of their 8 legs extended imploringly toward any passerby. Deer, elk, moose, and bighorn sheep are preferred, but humans will do. And here's another myth to bust about our ticks. They do not dig themselves into your body. Only the small mouth parts penetrate the skin. But they embed those mouth parts so well that ripping a tick off your body is a bad idea. The mouth parts, laced as they are with possibly pathogenic tick spit, will remain stuck in your skin. So you have to encourage the tick to detach on its own. Forget using alcohol or the end of a lit cigarette. This will only kill the tick while it is still attached. A gentle but persistent tug is the key. For this, you can buy a wee little lever that works very well. I keep one in my first aid kit and have had to use it several times, mostly on people I have encountered along the trail screaming, "Eek, Ernie, get it off me!" Enough about ticks? Good. Let's move on. Here is the classic spring bird of the Canadian Rockies, the ruffed grouse. This one is a male trying to attract a female. It does this by strutting about, spreading its tail, fluffing out the feathers on its neck, and calling thump, 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 the tempo increasing toward the end. This sound carries a long way, so the trick is to distinguish the mating call of a ruffed grouse from the sound of a big diesel engine starting up somewhere in the woods. Like the males of most any species carried away with sexual fervor, these birds can be aggressive. Their claws are sharp, so if you encounter one along the trail, it's wise to give it plenty of room. Seeing one always reminds me of Sid Marty's wonderful account of a bird he named Tex, guard grouse of the Porcupine Hills. Sid Marty is a famous Canadian author. In one of his books, he recounts how Tex intimidated a motorcycle gang. They fled, with Tex hanging onto a helmet, hammering away like a woodpecker. Marty ended the story by lamenting Tex's death. As happens so often to wild things, it was caused by an automobile. Recovering the lifeless form, he said, "We looked for his brain, but alas, we could not find it." And finally, here's your obligatory spring wildflower, Pulsatilla patens. Well, you could say patens or patens, as you please. I'm giving you the scientific name, not the common name, prairie crocus, which is wrong on 2 counts. Count 1, this flower is just as common in low elevation meadows in the mountains as it is out on the prairies. Count 2, it's not a crocus at all. It's in the buttercup family. So here's a name I like better than prairie crocus. I like pasque flower. It refers to how early it blooms in the spring, often around Easter. Pulsatilla patens was first classified many years ago as a member of the Pulsatilla genus. Then it was reclassified as a member of the anemone genus, which is the name I learned, Anemone patens. Now it's back to being a pulsatilla. Fine with me. Like the mispronunciation of Canadian Cordillera earlier in the show. We should say Canadian Cordillera, of course. Well, anemone was also always getting mispronounced. Anemone. Same with sea anemones being called sea anemones, or even worse, sea anemones. Here is a good way to remember how to say anemone. Think of it as any money, but with the accent on the second syllable, and you'll get it right. There's no hope for Cordillera. And we do have plants in the Rockies that remain members of the anemone genus, so no hope for them either. But Pulsatilla patens, at least, need not be insulted by semi-literate naturalist wannabes. By the time June rolls in, we Canadian Rockies residents are more than ready for warm summer days. But alas, June is the rainy month in our area, and the rain comes down cold. Still, park visitors are starting to roll into the campgrounds. They pop up their tents in the freezing drizzle and crawl into their sleeping bags, hoping for a better day tomorrow. Instead, they get this. These 2 guys told me they were heading back to L.A. But eventually, we reach July. The weather improves. Schools are out in Canada, and apparently everywhere else in the world, because scads of tourists arrive. Here's a busload of them at the Peyto Lake viewpoint in Banff National Park. By the way, that should be Peyto Lake. It was Bill Peyto, not Bill Peyto. But even I can't get that right all the time. But anyway, those folks are very impressed with the scenery, except for the person who stared at me while I took this photo. Of course, what they are really hoping to see is wildlife. Of this, we have plenty, and right along the highway, too. When you see this sign, "Caution, sheep on road," we really mean it. Here are a bunch of female bighorn sheep just getting off the bus, ready to start the day's work. They are all employed by the Jasper Chamber of Commerce to attract tourists. Okay, here's what they really do. They lick salt off a highway. They are not afraid of people, and they don't mind getting their pictures taken. You can get amazing photos right out your car window, like this bighorn ram. Full curl on the horns, scars on the nose from the fights he's been in with other rams during the mating season. Wouldn't you just love to get a picture like that? So I stuck my camera out the window of the car. And here's the photo I got. The sheep was wiggling its nose at me. It was hoping for a handout, but I didn't give it one, and neither should you. No, no, no. It's against park regulations to feed him anything. Keep your potato chips inside the car. And with good reason. Not only is junk food bad for them, it keeps them out on the highway hoping for salty snacks. And they get hit by cars, especially by big trucks, many of which barrel through the slowdown zones Parks Canada has put in place along stretches where they know the sheep hang out. Smacking a bighorn would mess up the front of your car, but it won't do much to the massive bumper of an 18-wheeler. Even if the truckers observe the 70 km/h speed limit in what the park wardens call the kill zones, well, that's still too fast. I remember when this speed limit was first introduced in the 1990s. It was 60 km/h, down from the standard 90 km/h throughout the park, which is down from 100 or 110 on most Alberta highways. That didn't last long. The trucking lobby got it raised from 60 to 70 km/h in a matter of weeks. Sure, we can blame the trucking companies for putting a tiny little delay in getting through the park ahead of wildlife protection. But Parks Canada is equally guilty. Those bighorns would not be standing in the middle of the road were it not for the rock salt the agency spreads on the highways all winter as de-icer. Some salt remains there in summer. Bighorn sheep crave salt, and they are not smart about oncoming vehicles. They just stand there, licking the road surface, and they get hit. There are alternative de-icing compounds available, and I have urged Parks Canada to use them, but they don't. Too expensive, they say. But what is one of those full curl rams worth as a tourist draw? And why should protecting this iconic wildlife species be a matter of money anyway? And not much money at that. Parks Canada and I have our differences. These are mountain goats. People are always confusing bighorn sheep and mountain goats, but they look quite different. Bighorn sheep, mountain goat. As you can see here, mountain goats are white all over with skinny black horns, and they aren't really goats. True goats are all in the genus Capra. The scientific name for the mountain goat is Oreamnos americanus. Oreamnos means mountain lamb. Wrong again, cause a lamb is a baby sheep. A baby mountain goat is called a kid, just like the offspring of real goats. Even though, as I just said, they aren't real goats. In fact, there are no other Oreamnos species in the world. This is the only one. Its closest relatives are goat antelopes in Asia. The ancestors of Oreamnos must have come from there during the ice ages when sea level was lower and animals could move into North America over the Bering Land Bridge. Evolution in isolation did the rest. You might think that these animals would be just as attracted to road salt as bighorns are, but not so. This picture was taken near Disaster Point along Highway 16 east of Jasper in a spot that's popular with both bighorn sheep and mountain goats. Yet the goats seldom lick the highway like the sheep do. Instead, this goat is having a sip of water after licking the black shale you see behind it. Well, what's in the shale? Iron pyrite, which contains sulfur. It's the sulfur the goats are after. They need it for growing their thick coats. And just so as you know, bighorn sheep are actually sheep. Speaking of animals that got here from Asia, here is another one, the red deer. I know you are thinking that I have it wrong. It's an elk. But listen up. It's actually the word elk that is wrong. The term comes from Northern Europe, and it refers to the moose. A long time ago, some visiting biologist from Germany got off the boat in North America and made a serious wildlife identification error. We have been stuck with it ever since. Even red deer is a bit off. That name refers to the European and Asian species, which are not quite the same as ours. The best name to use is wapiti, which is the official name in Canada. It comes from the Shawnee and Cree indigenous languages, and it means the thing with the white rear end. Perfect. The town of Red Deer, Alberta is named for this animal, as is Wapiti Campground in Jasper National Park, where quite a few wapiti do in fact share the place with human campers. Heck, wapiti come right into my yard in Jasper all winter. They like to eat the grass in the lawn. So I don't give it a last cutting at the end of summer. After all, until humans showed up 10,000 years ago, the place belonged to the wildlife. But when it comes to calling this species wapiti versus elk, I give up. Even the park wardens say elk. You may also hear male wapiti referred to as bulls. Again, even the park wardens use this term, but it is also wrong. As you can see, the correct term is stag. Females are properly termed hinds, not cows. In this case, the British have this right. When Sir Francis Drake sailed around the world on behalf of England, pirating Spanish galleons and pillaging their colonies, he did so in a ship he named the Golden Hind, not the Golden Cow Elk. One last true fact. Red deer, wapiti, had to be reintroduced in the Canadian Rockies in 1920. Railway workers ate the original ones. Well, there were some left in the Rockies north of the Peace River, but hardly anyone knew they were there. Nor were there any railroads being built that far north in those days. Good. Okay, here is an elk. It really is. This name, pronounced variously elk or alg in Europe, is correct. But in North America, we call it a moose. Our name comes from the Algonquin indigenous languages of eastern Canada, and it means twig eater. Indeed, this great big animal eats the ends of twigs all winter. It's a living. No naming problem here. These are clearly deer, white-tailed deer. You can tell by the tail, which is mostly brown. Well, okay, it's white underneath, and you see that as the deer runs away from you, tail held high to make sure that you identify it correctly. Here is our other species of deer, the mule deer. It's named for those big ears. The tail is mostly white. It's stuff like this that kept me from majoring in biology at university. I chose geology. Animals and birds and wildflowers are all well and good, but rocks are best. They are always in season, and they never fly away before you can identify them. I'm not sure what this was, but I didn't pick it up. Of all the animals that try to attract your attention, this is my favorite. I know, it looks like a chipmunk, but it's not. Chipmunks have stripes on their faces as well as on their backs. This particular rodent, they're all rodents, it has a white ring around its eye. Just confirming the caption on this photo, I agree that it is, in fact, a golden-mantled ground squirrel. It was probably photographed along one of the highway viewpoints in Jasper National Park. And it's eating a crouton. Croutons are seldom found growing wild in the park. Almost certainly someone has given one to this animal. But who would give a crouton to a ground squirrel? Not you, I hope. Not in the national park. Please be warned. If a warden catches you so much as swatting a mosquito on your arm, you could get 2 tickets for that, one for feeding wildlife and the other for killing it. Okay, what is this animal? Is it a marmot? No. By now you know that all these are trick questions. It's a Colombian ground squirrel. But does it live in the equatorial country of Colombia? Of course not. It lives in British Columbia and in Alberta and in the Pacific Northwest generally, home of the vast Columbia River drainage basin from which comes the name. Still, just for fun, I once told an audience that the Columbian ground squirrel was, in fact, from Colombia. I told them that the well-known mammalogists Agnes and Gerald Pleby captured a pair of these things near Bogota in 1952 and released them on the lawn in front of the Jasper Information Center later that year. The rest is history. When I told this story, no one batted an eye. This time it really is a marmot. A hoary marmot, to use the full name. Hoary because the silvery fur on these animals looks frosty. Marmots live in the park's alpine country, the land above the tree line. They have an enviable life up there, lolling about in flowery meadows all summer. Then they sleep the winter away. If you're a marmot, the only downside is that you may be ripped apart and eaten by a wolverine, or by an eagle, or by a grizzly bear, or by one of these. Well, what is it? You have your choice of fox, coyote, or wolf. Okay, it's probably not a fox because we don't have many foxes in the Canadian Rockies. Well, that leaves us with coyote or wolf. Given the large number of PhD level biologists who are no doubt in the audience today, let's put it to a vote. How many vote for coyote? I'm counting the hands here. Let's see. Oh, okay. And how many vote for wolf? I'm counting the hands again. Somebody voted twice. Stop that. Right. Since most of you voted for coyote, that's what it must be. This is how they used to do science in the Soviet Union. And just in case somebody here is actually wondering, it really is a coyote. Here for comparison is a wolf. The official full name is gray wolf. And in Canada, it's also officially G-R-E-Y, not G-R-A-Y. G-R-E-Y is the British spelling, and we use it because in some ways we're still British here. This is not something I would say while giving this talk in Quebec, where the gray wolf is loup gris. Back to the photo. Does this look like the Malamute you keep seeing loose in your neighborhood? Now you know what that animal really is. And by the way, in the Canadian Rockies, you can't identify a wolf by its coloration. True to its species name, we have gray ones like this. But we also have all over black ones and all over white ones, brown ones too, and combinations. What is a wildlife watcher to do? Well, here are 2 surefire ways to identify a true wolf. Ready for this? First, look at the eyes. They are always yellow. Then check the tail. It may be carried pointing up, or it may be level with the wolf's back, or pointing downward like this one, but it will always be straight. If the wolf-like creature attacking you in our area has its tail curved over its back, it's not a wolf, it's a dog. In fact, it's always going to be a dog. We needn't be afraid of wolves here. I have shared the forests around Jasper with plenty of them. Since records have been kept, there have been only 4 documented attacks by wild wolves in Canada. However, one of these was fatal. In 2005, 22-year-old Kenton Carnegie was killed by a pack of wolves near his geological field camp in northern Saskatchewan. The wolves had been habituated to garbage improperly dumped around the camp. Most of the other known wolf attacks have also involved food. Captive wolves, the ones you see behind the fence in a quote, wildlife park, unquote, are known to be dangerous. Stay clear. Enough about canids, wild and otherwise. Ever see tracks like these in the mud after a rainy night in your area? You might, if bears live there. But they probably won't be the tracks of this particular species. The grizzly bear. Just hearing the words grizzly bear may get the hairs on the back of your neck standing up. But I must tell you that this animal's fearsome reputation is undeserved. It is, after all, the same species as the brown bear of Europe, which was employed for many years in circuses wearing funny hats and riding around the ring on a tricycle. I mean, look at those cute ears. Look at that fuzzy face. Look at those long claws. Truly, though, in the Canadian Rockies, the grizzly bear is a shy guy of the high country. It spends its summers in alpine meadows, where it eats mostly vegetation. In the winter, it sleeps under the snow way up there. Attacks on humans are quite rare, so I'm not at all afraid of it. That canister of pepper spray I always carry on my waist while I'm hiking in grizzly country, you didn't see that. Here's the bear that is way more likely to kill and eat you. It's a black bear. They live almost anywhere in North America's woodlands. Black bears are found in New Jersey. Thus, we have become casual in our dealings with black bears. But this is a mistake. They are actually more predatory on humans than grizzly bears are. Give these animals plenty of room. I always do. If you see one of these cute little ones, give it even more room, because guess who might be hanging around just out of sight? It's Mum. So let's just try something else here. How about cats? We haven't covered cats. This is a lynx, our most common wildcat. We have bobcats as well, which are about the same size, but spotted, and cougars, which are much bigger. By the way, about that name, lynx, a friend of mine in Jasper assumed that lynx was the plural term for this species. He always referred to a single one as a lynx. Lynx are secretive. In all my years in the Canadian Rockies, I have seen only a few. One of them, though, was in plain sight, sitting patiently by a ground squirrel burrow one summer morning. It was waiting for the resident to poke its head out. My wife Sia and I watched from a respectable distance. When the ground squirrel emerged, the lynx caught it in the blink of an eye. Lynx feet are large, partly for walking on snow. The claws are long and, just like those of house cats named Fluffy, quite sharp. As we kept watching the lynx, it looked right at us with the ground squirrel dangling dead from its mouth, as if to say, "This is mine, folks." On to some observations about birds, which I should introduce by telling you what most of you may already know, that these animals are actually dinosaurs. Yes, that's right. Contrary to what we all learned back in elementary school, the dinosaurs did not all die out. Most of them did, of course, when an asteroid hit our planet 66 million years ago. But not all. And here is one of the descendants of the survivors. Clark's nutcracker may not look like T-Rex, but it's worth remembering who its kin were when it's sitting on your hand or stealing bacon from your breakfast. By the way, that photo must have been taken in the backcountry. Look at those fingernails. That's the way they get by about day 5 of a backpacking trip. Clark's nutcracker has a look-alike. Here it is, the Canada Jay. For those of you thinking that I have the name wrong and that it should be Gray Jay, please know that in 2018, the American Ornithological Society changed Gray Jay back to Canada Jay, which was the bird's original name. Well, we in Canada are delighted by that, even though we slavishly use American bird names. More on that in a minute. The Canada jay is the friendliest bird in the woods. It will also perch on your hand. And like Clark's nutcracker, a gray jay will help itself to whatever you are eating. If you see one gray jay, you will usually see three. The males and females look alike, and so do the parents and the young as they mature. So what are those three? Nestlings, most likely. Now nearly grown up, but still hanging out together. Soon they will split up and seek mates of their own. And here it is, the Canada goose, our goodwill ambassador to the United States every winter, where they are mostly unloved. Those droppings on the golf course, you know. But the Americans have their own way of getting even with us. For example, the American Ornithological Society has named the robin the American robin. There is the American widgeon and the American redstart, even though all these birds live in Canada in the summer and head south into the U.S. for the winter. But this goose is not named American goose. No, it's Canada goose, suggesting where the Americans wish these birds would stay year-round. In fact, some of them do. In Canada, you can see them paddling around all winter in the outfall from hydro plants and other spots that offer open water. And finally, here is my favorite dinosaur, the common raven. They are common indeed. You'll see them everywhere in the Canadian Rockies, and at every elevation from downtown Jasper to the summits of the peaks high above. They are terribly smart and very entertaining to watch. They seem to get a kick out of us, too. For example, Sia once saw a pair of ravens following the steps a friend and I had kicked in the snow, sloping up to a cliff we were climbing on. We had been roped together about 10 meters apart as we ascended the snow. The ravens left about the same distance between each other as they hopped from step to step. After they reached the upper end of our line of steps, the ravens said, "Rock!" in a way Sia interpreted as gleeful. Then they flew off. I like ravens. I like them so much that I have written a novel about them. It has won some awards. And 2 members of tonight's audience will also win something tonight, a copy of this book. A skill testing question must be answered. Well, a memory testing question. For those of you who do not win, I have copies of Raven's End available at a very attractive price, plus my other books, and personally inscribed by the author, he said in his warmest, most sincere voice. Gosh, I can see some apparently slumbering members of the audience waking up and starting to pay attention. So here we go. Do we have wildflower aficionados here this evening? Ah, good. And what, pray tell, is the name of this species? Excellent. Wild Gaillardia is correct. Please come up after the talk to receive a free copy of Raven's End. Here's another one to know. Any guesses? Calypso orchid, right again. And as before, please come up after the talk to collect your prize. But no prize for this flower. Everyone knows it. All together now. Everyone knows it. Alberta wild petunia. Okay, it's actually a wild rose. And despite Alberta claiming it is the official floral emblem of the province, to botanists it's the prickly wild rose, Rosa acicularis, not Alberta wild rose.